Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Russell Wilkinson, and welcome to the fourth session of the Pay 360 talks. As I said, it's the fourth session, and today we've had started off with Alex Common, who ran through innovation in the payment space. Then was followed by Wayne Campbell, who was showing a great session with regards to PCI compliance, and had a bit of a good cast in terms of who was there and who can see what's coming in the world of payments. We also then had a session just now on open banking and mobile apps, which was run by Paul Barber and Alex Common, and again was joined by an industry-leading partner there. Today's session, as you can see, is a focus on fraud, and basically, is the money you're paying out getting into the right hand? So it's a bit of a change of tack from what we've been running with today. You know, it's not as payments focused, but it's very, very pertinent and very topical that you will see, especially with some of the news that's been coming out today and some of the schemes that are coming to an end today as well. Just in terms of the session itself, we're going to obviously quick introduction, then we're going to do a quick kind of poll just to get you some kind of engaged in the session. I'm going to run through some examples and some statistics around fraud in the public sector, and primarily in the UK. Then we've got some thoughts about what's coming next in the industry, what we think is coming and what you might want to have a look at. I'm then going to hand over to James Williams. So he's a senior business development manager at Transunion, and he's going to run through some of the kind of the upcoming sort of solutions that are available to you now to help you kind of fight fraud. And then there's a few kind of trends and patterns that the guys at Transunion are seeing too. We'll then move on to a Q&A session. Just a bit of housekeeping. What you'll see, hopefully, on the right-hand side of your box is an arrow. Sorry, it's a question mark in a bubble. If you click on there, my colleague Alex is going to be running a Q&A today, so she'll be mediating that. So if you've got any questions at all, don't be shy. Ask questions, and hopefully myself and James between us will be able to cover them off. But just in case we can't, or we do run out of time, we'll answer them after the event. And then we'll be joined just to round off the day by Martin Smith. He is the head of the account development team here at Pay 360, and he's just going to do a bit of a summary of the day. So I've got a quick opening question for you. This isn't the poll. Basically, ultimately, is how confident are you that the money that your organisations pay out actually went to or actually goes to the right place and the people who need it most? And I mean, obviously the people on the call may be from benefits, so maybe from housing teams, or maybe even procurement. Lots of payments are paid out by your organisations to, could be businesses, could be individuals, but how confident are you that all the money that you pay out actually ends up where it should and goes to the right place? And with that, I'd like to, as I mentioned, I'd like to kick off with a poll. And the poll itself is basically in pounds, how much do you estimate is lost to fraud each year in the public sector? Now, the options are between 0 and £100 million, 100 to 500 million pounds, to £500 million to £1 billion, and is it over £1 billion? So they're quite kind of hefty numbers going on there. And we've got some answers coming in now, so we're getting some responses coming in. And again, just to run through the question there again, is in pounds, how much do you estimate is lost each year in the public sector? Now, is it 0 to 100, 100 to 500, 500 to £1 billion, and £1 billion plus? I'm getting loads of responses coming in here, which is really great to see. So we've got about 10 more seconds or so to go. We've got some very interesting figures coming in here about where you think the issue is with fraud. There we go. Last second for you to vote. Thank you. Right, and well, the results that we can see here is very interesting. So 9% of you think it's between 0 to 100 million. 40% I think it's between 100 to 50 million. 31% thought it was between £500 million to £1 billion, and about a fifth of you think it's over £1 billion. Now, sadly, I'm going to go on to show you the answer. Basically, it's estimated between 31 and 48 billion pounds is lost each year to fraud in the public sector. So those numbers are very, very kind of scary, and it's kind of an equation to the basically the defence, the annual defence budget that you can see within there. So just, and whilst I'll put that in context, and this is to show you how it affects the GDP. So in terms of the GDP, how this works, I've had a couple of technical issues on the screen there. Here we go. Between at the lower end of the scale, that is roughly about 1.58% of the GDP, and at the upper end, that's roughly about 2.45% of the GDP. So that is money that's coming straight out of the British economy. It's not getting to you guys, it's not getting to the local authorities. And it basically means that it's not enabling you to have the money to provide the services that you want to provide. But taking it to another level is, how does this actually affect you as an organisation? So again, per person, that works out between £462 per person. The upper end about £715 per person, and that includes adults, it's children, it's everybody in the UK. So that's how much is being lost per person. Based on per household, there's roughly about 28 million households here in the UK. So per household at the lower end, it's about £1,100. And at the higher end, it's about £1,700 per household is being lost due to kind of benefit fraud, various types of fraud each year, which is frankly quite scary numbers. Got some headlines that you may have seen, some of these over the last year or so. A lot of it is based around COVID and coronavirus. So we've seen lots of different elements where basically fraud has always been there, but especially with the push for COVID, with COVID grant payments, with furlough, there's been lots of opportunity for fraudsters to take advantage of the system. Though maybe infrastructure hasn't been in place, but you can see some of the headlines here yourself. Coronavirus, up to £3.5 billion in furlough payments. So this was from this time last year. It is basically could be paid out, could be to fraud or paid out in error. COVID fraud, £34.5 million stolen due to pandemic scams. Even there's a guy, my name was used for a government grant, and that was a sort of guy called Ian. He was contacted by his local authority asking how he's going to pay £50,000 back that he borrowed. He did. Somebody basically used identity theft, and they created a company in his name and made a payment. So again, you can see that not all organisations have or did have their ducks in a row. And even from today, as you're probably aware, today sees the end of the furlough payments. So that is coming to an end today. So potentially, as you can see in the bottom left-hand side, this was from today's BBC website. Cost of living, £500 million in new grants to help the poorest households. So you are going to see money is being made available, but you are going to see a rise in some of the claims that could be coming to you. And obviously, but hopefully there is funding coming for that. But again, lots of change are happening today, and obviously moving ahead. This got some headlines from a summary report. This is a Nielsen report that was published on the 20th. It's actually published on the 30th of June this year, and it's from the House of Commons report. This is a report available online, and it's basically it's a report based around the fraud and error that's been seen. So it's a Nielsen report, and some of the headlines, so just the summary headlines are that between April 2020 and March 2021, fraud within universal credit rose to an all-time high of 14.5%, and that equates to roughly about £5.5 billion. Quite staggering numbers, I'm sure you'll agree. And I reckon between 35 and 60%, which is the equivalent of £16 billion to £27 billion of loans issued throughout the bounce back loan scheme, may never be repaid due to fraud or credit risks. Again, quite ridiculous numbers there. And the final one is the Cabinet Office estimates that the annual level of undetected fraud and error could cost the taxpayer up to £25 billion a year. And that's even before you look at the COVID schemes, the furloughs and all the various schemes in place there. So the levels of fraud are quite staggering. So yeah, the 20% of you who said it was about $1 billion plus voted right. So yeah, it's there, it's here. And I guess the next piece is going back is what's happening next. We've all experienced it. I mean, ultimately the question is the shift to a more digital and remote way of working, is it going to stay? We all, I mean, as you can probably see, I am working from home. Many of us have been on the calls today. Maybe seen all the presenters, bar none have actually been in the home environment. And your organisation, again, everyone has different rules. I don't think I'm going back into an office anytime soon, but some people on the call may be from an office. So again, lots of organisations are very different, and they've had to shift the way they've worked in the last year and a half to be very digital, to have different ways of how you interact with your customers, with the people who are trying to access your services and your finances. So ultimately, is this going to stay the way it is now, or is there going to be a general shift back to the traditional way of working, how we used to go into offices and see people and meet face to face? But again, is it going to stay? Partly linked to what we just talked about today, benefits payments will always be in place. I guess the question there is, how are you going to assess applicants? With today, the end of the furlough payments, obviously, and I think the universal credit £20 payment scheme also ends today or very soon. Sadly, you may see there'll be people who have been paying off their council tax, they've been on the system, they've been regular payers, so you kind of know who they are, but they've been just paying and just day to day, perfect customers. But sadly, you may find a rise in people who need to apply for benefits to help them get by, day to day. Housing, it could be rent, it could be any kind of benefit, and any kind of income benefit, job seekers allowance, and anything like that. And I guess ultimately, you're going to see more people, you're going to have to assess them. And I guess the decision again is, are you going to meet the influx of people? Are you going to meet them face to face? Or are you actually going to be more digital and continue down the digital route of how you liaise and interact with the customers? And like I said, the people who are trying to kind of access your system to get the benefits that they need. And also what's coming next with the end of furlough. Some people on the call may have already been approached about this. So I know anecdotally some organisations we've spoke to have started to be approached. And basically it's about post-event assurance. Now, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on what this is, because I know James is going to be covering some of this off in his session. But ultimately, it's checking, going back to my original question, is did the money that you've paid out, and this is based on more around COVID, not just payments in general, the money you paid out to businesses, to individuals, for furlough, for self-isolation schemes, did it go to the right place? Did it get to the right people? That's the key message from today, is what checks are in place to make sure that, firstly, moving ahead, making sure that it does go to the right people, but then going back the other way, what's already happened is all that money that got paid out, the hundreds of millions of pounds, the billions of pounds, did it go to the right place? And with that, I'd like to launch the second poll of the day. It's a very, very simple poll. It's basically, are you aware, actually before obviously us talking about it, about the COVID post-event assurance program? It's very simple, it's a yes or no. So again, for today, are you aware, or do you know of maybe your organisation, your authority, your housing association? Do you know if you've been approached to basically go out and say, right, you paid out all this money, where did it actually go? Again, it's a scheme that again, it's available on the public website. Some very interesting responses coming in here. Got about 15 seconds left to vote, so if you can keep going. Again, just again, a simple question. Before us having this conversation, were you aware that the COVID post-event assurance program, what it is and if it's coming? And we've got a couple of seconds now. Most of you have voted. There's some really, really interesting responses there. So basically what we can see, that 11% of you have said yes, they are aware. And actually 89% of people on the call which actually bodes quite well for you, James, in terms of it leading into your session and you being able to sort of explain a bit more about what it is. But so 89% of people were not aware of the program being in place. And with that, that's the end of my short session. I'm going to actually hand you over to James now, and he will pick up the mantle.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for letting me join your event today. I'm currently sat at home, like Ross, not together. We're not kicking each other under the table. I'm up here in, I would say, sunny Leeds, but it's pouring rain and looks like the end of the world out there today. So yes. So as Ross said, my name is James Williams. I'm a Senior Business Development Manager at Transunion and sit within the government team here at TU. Transunion, for those that don't know, are one of the 3 credit reference agencies out there in the marketplace in the UK today, and we provide solutions and services to a number of government departments, directly, indirectly, central government, local government, housing associations, and as I say, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit more about is money you're paying out getting into the right hands, and some of the things that we can do to support you either at the time or retrospectively. But perhaps before we go on to that, it'd be amiss of me not to talk about some of the sort of what we're hearing in the market at the moment. As you know, we're sort of moving, should we say, from the COVID to people potentially returning to the office and hopefully some sense of normality. What are we actually hearing in the marketplace today? Well, Brexit and COVID have certainly driven consumer fear. This has obviously created new opportunities, for criminals, to exploit and work around sort of fraud. Data breaches, we've seen them in the press, everything from, the very large one with TalkTalk many years ago, the BA one, etc. But even smaller data breaches allow consumers' personal information to be leaked onto, the likes of the dark web and social media and be sold, allowing, criminals to impersonate yourself and individuals. Unfortunately, I've experienced it firsthand with, my mother-in-law, and it does feel as though someone's breaking into your house. It's and I hope no one on the call today has experienced it, but it can be, very upsetting and very sort of damaging to people's confidence. As we move towards a more digital world, stolen identities from what we've just talked about. I don't know if anyone has recently opened a bank account or taken out a loan, but the interaction now is very much voiceless, faceless. It's on an app. It's done remotely. You don't go in and see a bank manager anymore. You typically don't speak to anyone, and you don't get anything sent to your home address. So that allows people to look at things like account takeover or individual, takeover, where they take out a loan in an individual's name, direct all the email traffic, etc., to a fake email address, and unfortunately, the individual in question only finds out about it, after the event. So which obviously can be, sort of very, very disconcerting. What else are we hearing? The financial hardship that's obviously hit so many people, it has put huge financial strain on individuals and has led to what we could describe as law-abiding citizens, looking to commit potential fraud, as sort of the financial stress really takes its toll. The only constant is change. So what does the future hold? Well, we're seeing, digital transformation, emerging technologies, AI, driverless cars. There's a whole host of things out there. The one which sprung out for me was pet insurance. Probably like a number of people on the call today. I know Russ was one as well. We got ourselves a lockdown puppy. When I say a puppy, Diesel is a Rhodesian Ridgeback and weighs 55 kilos and pretty much takes over the whole house, to be honest. But speaking to the insurance team, they've seen a huge increase in insurance fraud and scams, due to people, fraudulently claiming, animals have been stolen, vet bills, etc. So, things are changing at pace, and it's our, one of our jobs to, to try and protect people and protect organisations. And then I think finally, fraudsters' tactics are constantly evolving. you're always trying to stay one step ahead of the fraudsters. But as it says there, the fraudster, whereas a burglar in your house has to physically be in the location, a fraudster could be anywhere in the world at any time of the day. They know no boundaries, and should we say, they don't take no prisoners, unfortunately. So there's some of the things we're hearing from across the market, and I think if we go back now, to sort of the exam question, I don't want this to be certainly a sales pitch in any way, shape or form. I just want this to be sort of information about what can be done and what can be done, as I say, at the time or retrospectively. At Transunion, we offer a number of solutions, as I say, which have been taken in government. And up on the screen at the moment is our True Validate wheel. It is can be taken like I suppose like a piece of cheese. You can take segments of it, or you can take the whole thing. So if we go round the wheel, we provide bank and card verification, and I'll talk about that more in a minute when we're looking to answer the exam question from today. But basically, can we identify someone, or can we confirm that a bank account exists, or a card exists, or a credit card exists? As we move, identity, we can do anti-money laundering checks, we can do international checks, etc. The one as we further on, enhanced ID verification. Now, this has certainly become something that has really taken off over the last few years here at Transunion. Basically, remote verification of driving licenses, passports, etc. Everything from opening a bank to interacting, with the likes of HMRC, COVID passports, etc. But the ability that you can download an app and take a, sort of screen grab, do a liveness check of yourself, and progress from there, as traditionally sending off your passport or driving license. As we move further around, authentication, analytics, I think what I'd like to move on to is things like device, phone and email, and the risk that is associated with those. So like so many people, I've got an email address that goes back many years, and I think that would indicate that that's a sort of, it could be a trusted email address. It's been around forever. But if I was to put an application, or if I was a fraudster, I wouldn't use that email address. I'd use a new one. So a number of the solutions that we have would allow you that when an application comes into you, and this can be done at the time in real time or retrospectively, it can look to see that the application for a grant or for some money, it looks as though it's coming from James Williams here in Leeds, but actually the device is based in London or in Eastern Europe. And that can obviously raise, flags and alerts. The phone number that I've put down, yes, it's a UK number, but it's actually roaming abroad at the moment, again, raising flags. And the email address, as I say, my Hotmail I've had since I was at university many moons ago. But as I say, if someone set up an email address a few days ago or within the last hour, or the velocity of the amount of times that email address is being used, again, all these things can be flagged to identify that this could be a fraudulent sort of application, or a fraudulent request to take money, and all of these sort of drive very much a sort of a trust. So what we're looking to do is associate all these different things. So the bank account looks correct, the email address looks correct, but the device is somewhere unusual. So you would set rules, set flags, and then perhaps this needs further investigation before allowing the money through. With regards to the post-event assurance, as I say, we've seen a big increase in requests that where applications or money has been paid out, for these to be looked at in greater detail. And as I say, we can go on to talk about that a little bit more. So going back to the exam question, is the money you're paying out getting into the right hands? So the challenge, can the bank account where money's been paid into directly link to the applicant? Yes, no. Sorry if I'm reading off the screen, but it works there. So firstly, does the sort code and account number exist? Yep, tick, great. Who is the account issuer? Yep, that's correct. They've said it's a Barclays Bank, and yep. And what facilities does it have? So we can ascertain whether or not, as a bureau, whether or not this will accept direct debits, will accept payments, exactly what type of account it is, to make sure that if someone's asking for money, that it can be paid into it. So can we link the identity with the same bank account with the credit bureau? So basically, does James Williams, his sort code, account number with a HSBC account? Yep, that looks all fine. Great, no problem. Right, we can pay that out with confidence. But if it doesn't, let's look at what we can do just to go on to the next stage. So what we offer is something called a bank ownership fraud alerts. So quite often, people might have the forename. So we're talking here, can we link the account to an alternative identity? So the example I might give is myself and my wife own a coffee shop, and we've applied for a hospitality grant for £10,000. So I apply for it, James Williams, but my wife, it's paid into my wife's account, Hella Williams. So the money has been paid correctly into the account, but the first name is different. So would that raise a flag? Well, what we can look at is identifying those that are being paid into joint accounts. For example, the address might be different. So I might have put down my home address as opposed to my business address, or I've moved house recently. So all of the ownership fraud alerts can be set up to identify the areas where fraud could be taking place and might require further investigation. We've seen it where, for example, sort of payments have been made for my son has just turned 17. He's wanting to learn to drive. The money for the insurance, it's his name is the insurance policy, but actually it's coming out of my bank account. So again, this is where these type of things can be used to create slight friction, but not too much. And again, you can set the rules to identify whether or not you think this is a fraudulent request for monies, or whether or not this can pass through. Finally, if the bank account isn't found, we can move on to a third stage that we offer, that is non-consented data, or bank account premium for non-consented data. Basically, around the early 90s, banks realized that they needed to ask people's consent for doing credit checks. So if you've had a bank account from pre-2000, the early 90s, when you're doing a credit application, those bank accounts won't be seen. But we can go into these accounts, around 30 million of them. Around 30 million bank accounts not shared with the UK's 3 credit reference agencies for decisioning purposes, but it can be used for identifying. So if money is being paid into one of these accounts, so we have access to around 30 million accounts. So if someone has, if I'd had a bank account from the 1980s and still had it today, it wouldn't be seen for credit referencing, decision making, but it would certainly be used, or could be used, if someone is wanting to, pay the money into. So what next? Transunion offer a number of investigation and trace tools. So the challenge, what to do if the money has got into the wrong hands? Well, we offer tools that allow you to investigate the alleged fraud in greater detail, trace individuals who may be linked to the fraud, and look at best way for collections and/or prosecution. And again, these can be taken in different ways, via APIs, via batch, online, etc. So I think if that's all right, I will hand back to Russ, and thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thanks, James. That was a brilliant insight. As ever, it's great to see. And yeah, that's brilliant information. Great insight to what kind of the tools that are out there that are possible for you to be able to see what's happening, and allow organisations, anyone who's on the call today or watching the video, to again to be confident that you're doing the right checks, or you're checking to make sure again people are who they say they are, and the money is going to the right place. Now, Alex, I'm going to move on to the questions section now, the Q&A. So, have there been any questions coming in from myself and James?
Hi there. Yes, hello everyone. I have a few questions here. So the first one is actually for you, James. Do you always have to run an identity check alongside the bank verification?
Yes, you do. Yeah, I suppose we could talk quite a bit about this. Yes, So if there's so sorry, just read that back to me again, because I want to make sure I'm saying the right thing. But yeah, sorry, apologies.
So the question is, do you always have to run an identity check alongside the bank verification?
Yes, because otherwise we wouldn't know who we were checking. I'm just thinking the way it's phrased that, to be honest. Yes, I believe the answer is yeah. I'm going to say yes, and if someone proves me wrong, then I'll apologise at a later date.
Okay, I have another question. This one's for you, Russell. How easy is it to access identity checks, especially if we have limited IT and development resource?
That's a great question. The answer is it is actually very simple. There are various platforms out there. I mean, James has mentioned some of the ones that Transunion offer, and he did actually touch upon it within his section. Is that, and with Pay360's own optimized verify platform, is that you can access lots of these portals online. Again, just with kind of username and password, so you can access and do checks very quickly. So there's very kind of limited integration work that needs to be done. As things develop, you can access, you can do bulk checks as well. So James alluded to batch checking. That's something that the organisations can do. So they can do a bulk check. So now whether it could be, I don't know, a single person discount or the various types of check if people's status has changed. No, there's various types of check now in terms of housing, for benefits that are possible. And if resource does become available, if things do expand again, APIs can be used as well. So APIs can be put into your authority systems, and you can be able to run checks. Again, all of these checks are pretty much in real time, even as maybe in the self-service side, where people are filling out forms online, you can be doing checks and identity and just verifying that person is who they say they are. And again, depending on what comes back, you can then make sure that which workflow you're going to. So if they fail, James touched upon email addresses. They a lot like him. I had the same email address for years, but if I had someone's details, they could be applying. But if the email was only of a certain age, or wasn't something not quite right about the email address, you may have a different workflow and ask for maybe additional bits of information. Again, just to make sure that the person or the business is actually a legitimate applicant.
Okay, thank you. And I've got another one here for James. Could Transunion help with tracing an individual we have paid by mistake and now off radar, rather than the individual committing a fraud?
Yes, we can. There are a number of ways it can be done. We offer it, as Russ has just mentioned, we can do batch. So if there's a number, we can do it. We have a portal that I suppose a bit. We call it Retriever. It's a bit like Google. You can put limited information in about the individual, and it will bring up where they've moved to, where they are, and help you trace. That's typically used, with them in, investigatory by, criminal justice, police forces, etc. So yeah, be delighted to talk to you about that in more detail. And apologies, Alex, on the first question from the lady or gentleman in the audience. Sorry, my microphone, my headset was playing up. So yes. As we're, attempting to link a bank account to an identity, we do have to do an identity check as part of the bank account check. Sorry, my headphone was playing up there, so apologies.
Okay, thank you. And I can't see any other questions. Just one more before I hand back to Martin. So the last question is actually for you again, James. Do the checks that you have discussed impact the consumer's credit file?
Great question. We get asked this all the time. In relation to the type of check they're doing, we have to, for all, sort of audit reasons, we do have to leave a footprint on the consumer's credit file, but this will be a soft footprint. So this will only be seen by the individual themselves when they look at their credit file. It won't be seen by Barclays or HSBC in decisioning. So if you've had this sort of footprint left, a soft footprint, it won't affect you taking out a mortgage or a credit card or buying a car, etc. And the footprint will actually stipulate who carried out the sort of the check. So for example, if it was Leeds City Council or HMRC, it will actually say that, but as I say, it will only be visible to the individual who has obviously applied for the grant, for example.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, if that's the end of the questions, thanks everyone for taking
Oh, hang
part.
on, sorry.
Sorry, there's another question coming.
We've got one more just come in, just one last one.
Okay.
And I think this one is for you again, James. Can the checks be linked to a master data or app system to do the checks without human intervention?
Okay, I need to think about that. Yes, I mean, anything's possible with technology via an API. Obviously, it's just from the point of view, and perhaps as Russ said, that there are ways and means that anything can be done. I guess it's how much investment and time. But the way I'm reading that is, an organisation would, if someone's applying for a grant, then it, as the person submits the application, it whizzes over to the Bureau via an API, and then obviously a bit like you would do if you're applying for a loan, it either declines or accepts it. I think that's probably what someone is saying, and apologies if it's not. But basically, yeah, the way we would work is that we would set up like a scorecard for you, like a pass-fail. So as yourself, that if, for example, depending on what they're applying for, you might want to make the criteria very strict or relatively easy for them, to pass. For example, if they're applying, sorry to say this, it's green bin day, but if they're applying for a new green bin or something like that, I know we're talking about fraud here, so perhaps people aren't trying to steal green bins, shall we say. But what I'm saying is, if someone's applying for a grant, you might put down that they need to complete a number of areas, a number of things. So, name, address, bank account, and then obviously in the background things like the email risk, the device risk, the phone, etc. is all running. Now, if everything goes over to us and comes back again in a matter of seconds and everything passes, then that passes and there's no human intervention. Where human intervention might take place is if a couple of those things fail. So the bank account is different to the person who's applied for it, and we can't link it with sort of the ownership fraud alerts, or there is something wrong. They're applying for it, everything looks fine, but as I say, the device that they're applying from is based overseas. Then you might just have a sort of the page come up saying, thank you, we need some further information, someone will be in touch. The whole idea of anything that we're sort of providing is to stop fraud, but for those genuine applications, for whatever it is, keep it as as not light touch, but as friction free as possible, because it's like anything. If you're applying for something online, the worst thing in the world is when it's keeps juddering along. You just want to go through smoothly. So in a nutshell, yes, anything is possible, and be delighted with Russ's help to talk further about it.
Thank you. And lastly, someone's asking for your contact details, but I'm assuming how will they receive those, James? Russell?
Well, hang on, is this a fraudulent? Is someone trying to get my email address? Fraud. Please direct anything to Russell. As I say, we speak on a very regular basis.
Yeah, and just on the back of that, anything of interest today, also we talked about quite a range of topics. So if you want to, any more information, want to get to myself or James, if you want to contact your account manager or your regular Pay360 contact, we'll be more than happy to make the next step. And firstly, just for me, I want to say thank you very much, James. Thanks for joining the session today. And I'm going to now pass you to Martin to finish off the day and just say a few comments from his perspective. And thank you, everyone, for coming.
Yeah, indeed, that's actually the first thing I want to say is thank you very much for actually being a customer. We know you have choice. You can decide who you want to provide these types of services, and you're choosing us. So we genuinely appreciate that. And the conception of these days of looking at how we drive thought leadership, create insight, is very much a part of us seeking to create additional value for you as our customers and show our appreciation of you being a customer. They are arranged for you. There's a lot of people involved, and I won't go and thank all of them, but there are very many people involved in setting the things up and also on the day itself in delivering it. We'll be sending out a survey shortly after the sessions close. We welcome your feedback. I say they are designed to create value for you. If you're seeing value in them, please let us know. If we're not hitting the mark in some areas, we need to know that as well, so we can finesse them, for our next sessions. The recordings from all of today's sessions will be available. We'll be hosting those on our resource hub, and we'll be issuing links as well for those recordings. Some of them edited down just so they're a bit more accessible. Equally, you can reach out to your account development manager, and they'll be happy, to engage you around anything you're particularly looking to progress as well. That's really it. Thank you very much for attending. I hope you've enjoyed the day. I hope you got value from it. Enjoy your evening, and we'll see you at the next one. Thank you very much.